Let's roll then. So Rotherham United next on the horizon, Conor. How's the team looking in terms of availability and players coming back there?
Yeah, okay. We've got a couple of niggles on one or two that we're kind of nursing and looking after. So we'll see if they can pull through, obviously with the busy schedule of Friday and Monday. Josh Orr will be back, which is a big positive. So that's good. He's been on the grass now for about 7 days. The Easter weekend games came too quick for him. So he's been on the grass again all this week. So if he can get through the next couple of days, he'll be in contention for the game as well. So that's a big plus. And kind of other than that, really, we are where we are. So, the nursing of the couple of injuries that we're having a look at, we'll just have to see if they come true or not.
Are you... Give us an impression then, are you confident they'll make it, or is it a bit more precarious than that?
It's going to be a 50-50 one, if I'm honest. Look, we've got, from Rotherham now, we don't stop until the end of the season. So, do we want to risk one or two for one game, or are we going to look at maybe the last kind of 4 or 5 having people, in a good shape? So I think that's one that we're going to have to consider moving forward into the game.
I fully appreciate there are always more questions when teams aren't winning.
Mm-hmm.
But an irritation, or it seems an irritation for Barnsley supporters at the minute, is the selection of players out of position. I suppose the latest is Shepherd still at left back and Bland at right back. Explain your thinking there.
Yeah, I think with Shep, obviously we put him left back probably now 4 or 5 games ago, maybe something like that. I thought against 2 games back-to-back when he played left-back against Exeter and against Cardiff, we had real positive results in them 2 games. So we wanted to kind of stick with him, and he gives us height and he gives us a little bit more, physicality from set plays. For example, Plymouth at the weekend, it was a big strength of theirs, and we wanted as much height in the team as possible. And I thought the lads dealt with the set plays scenario really, really well. Obviously, look, we didn't get the result, of course, and we conceded poor goals. But in terms of actual set plays, Burton Albion was the same. Obviously, we started with Shep at left back, but that quickly changed with the Owen O'Connell situation. He went into centre half, but again, they had a big physical, direct style of play with 2 big strikers up the top of the pitch. So we wanted extra height in the team from that point of view as well. So, that's been Shep really at left back. And in terms of Blandy, we obviously mentioned that we had a little bit of a scenario with Tanai Watson going into the game, going into Plymouth, and Corey O'Keefe wasn't fit enough to make the bench. So Blandy this time last year played plenty of games for me at right back, so we had to make do with playing somebody there against Plymouth, and that's the kind of the thought process around both of them, really.
So. Yeah, O'Keefe, he's missed a couple of games now, hasn't he? And I suppose to lob in another fullback, Gent, where are they in terms of being, available to play football?
Yeah, Gent, Georgie has played a couple of 21s games, and look, I think I've seen a little bit of a clamour, and people kind of need to understand the context and around, things behind closed doors that people don't see. And there's a certain application, there's a certain standards that you need to meet every single day. You need to train properly, you need to turn up on time, you need to apply yourself properly to get in the squad and to get in the team. And for me, George, over these last kind of few weeks hasn't met that. So he's been told, other people have been told along the course of the season. It doesn't mean that the door is closed on Georgie at all, but he needs to meet a standard and a professionalism that I expect from every single player.
I know from one week to the next, the narrative can change with Barnsley because it kind of is what it is. But with regard to defence and the conceding of goals, no one doubts that it's not worked on relentlessly. But does the fact that it's been 2 clean sheets in the league season this season mean that they're not good enough? Fans come on and say words like it's disjointed, that type of thing. Does it just mean they're not good enough? They're not listening? What's the problem?
No, I think they are doing everything they can, to keep a clean sheet. And ultimately, I think it's just not being good enough over the course of the season. I'm not going to point at one individual, or it's a combined effort between, me, coaching staff, players, mindset around it, And ultimately it's just not been good enough for the course of the season. It's probably been the biggest thing over the course of the season that I've been really, really disappointed from my head coach point of view, not the players, because I can see they're trying their utmost to do the right things at times and whatnot. But it was the one thing probably in the off season that I said to me, the coaching staff, the players, that I wanted a real improvement on it. I think last year, off the top of my head, was it 6 clean sheets over the course of the season? I think off the top of my head. And we've had 2. I think last year, teams who were in and around the top 6 were getting 15 maybe, give or take. Again, excuse the exact numbers, but I think they were in and around the 15 plus numbers. And we've just been nowhere near good enough in terms of keeping clean sheets. Full responsibility on me, full accountability on me. And I know the players will be also very disappointed with it, because from a self-pride point of view, that number of clean sheets just isn't good enough.
So, without running the risk of sounding very basic, which I know I'm going to, can that be changed with the personnel you've got, or will it mean very significant player changes in that area of the squad in the summer?
I think both. To be totally honest with you, it can be changed between now and the end of the season if we, have a more of a kind of a concentration and a fixed way of maybe playing heading into the last kind of clutter of games. I think defensively, from a team aspect, from back to front, we need to be organised and connected, and we've done work on that. It's just not been kind of going our way, and that's not to kind of make any excuses, but we do need to be better, and we do need to have more focus and concentration around it if we want to pick up the points in the last kind of 7 games that we want to.
Yeah, +5 on the relegation zone. Yes, games in hand. Fans have a fear and an agitation that Barnsley are kind of sleepwalking themselves back into trouble. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I can understand it, because over the last kind of 6-7 games, the results haven't been good enough, and we know that there's been quite a lot of draws in there as well. I think it's 1-7, 4 draws, 2 losses. So the two. The amount of draws that we've had, obviously, is, you could look at it and go, we're very close to getting victories, or people could say we're not getting enough victories. It depends how you look at it. But ultimately, 1 win in 7 isn't good enough, and we need to turn some of them draws into wins. We should have, in my opinion, won at Mansfield. We got a good draw against Cardiff, who are obviously a very good side. So there's been a kind of you can take different looks at certain draws. We didn't play well on Sky against Wigan, but we nicked a draw late on in the game. So look, over the last block of 7 games, I know everyone knows that there's not been enough victories, that's for sure.
Do you think, has an apathy set in amongst the squad?
In terms of,
Well, I suppose the blunter way of describing it is that some fans think that the players don't seem to have bothered.
No, I think that's unfair. I think I don't think that that they're not bothered. I do think that the squad's probably in a moment of transition, of change, of young, of a lot of people out of contract in the summer. So I do think from that point of view, the group are probably in a moment of, am I going to be here? Am I going to get a new contract? Is there going to be huge changes? And there probably will be big changes, of course. That's naturally the way at this level for a lot of squads, but we do seem to have a lot of players out of contract. You can look at it one way and go, them players should be playing out with their skin because they want a contract elsewhere, or they want a new contract here, or they want to, have an incentive to get more money ultimately wherever they go in the summer. Or you could look at it in a way of, well, I'm not going to be here, so I'm not going to try as hard. So I do think that there is a squad scenario of real kind of unbalanced from a point of view of, we're going to build on this squad and we're going to move forward with it. That's not going to be the case because there's so many players out of contract. And it's going to look completely different in the summer when the kind of recruitment comes along, and we are going to continue going that little bit younger and whatnot, and how that looks.
Are you set fair in your? I realise that the retained list thing, that's for the future. But are you set fair in your mind? Meaning, if a player you feel ain't going to be good enough to continue, no one can change your mind now. Even if Barnsley win every single match between now and the end of the season, your mind is made up.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close. Let's put it that way. If someone was to go on and get 5 goals in 6 games if you're a midfielder, or if you're, a defender and you go and get 6 clean sheets from 7, it's naturally going to have a little bit of an effect on your thought process. But right now, it's pretty kind of set in stone the way how it looks, really.
Moving on to football games, obviously 2 games against Rotherham and Port Vale, 2 teams that at some point we're going to get their relegations confirmed. How, particularly with the Millers first then, how do you view their challenge at the weekend, or your challenge against them?
Yeah, ultimately it's a Yorkshire derby, and we know that we have to be right up and ready for it, regardless of where they are in the league. We need to be completely ready for the challenge ahead. I was at their Port Vale game on Tuesday night, obviously because we've got them 2 opponents in the next 2 games. And I thought Rotherham were decent in the second half, particularly. They probably should have got something from the game. They had some chances. So they're still fighting, and they're still looking to get the points on the board to give themselves a chance. So we know it's going to be really difficult. I think we need to improve in our performances over anything, though, for us to get the positive result. I think Burton Albion, obviously, it was a difficult game and it was a hard place to go. And there's been some big teams lose there over the last kind of month or 2. But we need to improve in our performance. It was same against Plymouth. Look, Plymouth are flying high and in a really good moment, so it's always going to be a difficult game. But we need to improve on the performance as well. So, look, whatever Rotherham are doing, we need to focus on ourselves and really improve on our performance if we want to come out with any sort of result.
Best of luck.
Thank you. Cheers.
Hi Conor, you mentioned Corey O'Keefe, just to check on how he's doing and if he could play at Rotherham, and also Tawanda Chirewa, is he back in that you're thinking as well for selection?
Yeah, so on Corey's in a good place. Monday come too close for him, so Corey's going to be, once he gets through the couple of sessions on the grass now, he'll be available for selection, so that's good. Josh Earl the same. And Tawanda, he's been on the grass. He's been out for a decent amount of time. He's not had loads of work, so will this weekend come a little bit too soon for him potentially, but he is back in the building.
And just on Rotherham, obviously they've got a new manager who's been in 3 or 4 games now, Lee Clark. What do you make of him? Obviously very experienced, but not been around in the English game for a while, and the style of play under him. Yeah,
no, we have to obviously fully respect obviously what we've seen over the last kind of 3 games. They've obviously played a Lincoln away, which is obviously a tough game for anyone. They've had Stevenage at home, and obviously I was at the Port Vale game the other night. They're playing a back 4, and they had a lot of attackers on the pitch. With 2 wingers and kind of 2 strikers, or a 10 and a striker, whatever you want to call it. So they're still going all out to win games of football. One that we need to be fully ready on. We have to have the right mentality heading into the weekend. I want to give our fans something to shout about in the Yorkshire derby. I think, we haven't had, you haven't given performances or results enough to the fans over this last kind of period of games. So my hope is to put in a proper performance on Saturday going into Rotherham and to give our fans something to smile about.
Obviously, people will look at the next 2 games and their position and probably put Barnsley as favourites, but they're both fighting for their lives. They're both at home and pride to play for as well. Do you need to sort of match that motivation and intensity first of all, and then hopefully your football will do the talking?
Absolutely, Doug. Yeah, first and foremost, regardless of wherever anyone is in the league, you have to have the right mindset to go into any game of football. We have to scrap, we have to fight, we have to win our duels, we have to come out with the ball and then show that the bit of quality that we have, to hopefully get the right result. But ultimately, we have to match the intensity, respect the opposition, and respect where they are in the league. But they're fighting for their lives, and it's something that we need to stand up for and be ready for.
I know you said that post-match on Monday you need probably 3 or 4 points just to make yourselves definitely safe. I mean, sort of to be saying that I know you've got games in hand, but to be saying that as Barnsley manager in mid-April, is that something you didn't think you'd be saying in League One? Is it quite frustrating and disappointing to even be saying that?
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. Yeah, really frustrating, really disappointing. Something I didn't, plan to be saying, like you touched on. So from that point of view, it's been really disappointing. To be touching on that in the last kind of 7 games is a frustrating season for everyone, really. So, it's something that we need to put right over these next kind of block of 7 games to finish the season as strongly as we can. And there's no way better to start it than in a local rival Yorkshire derby game.
Yeah, because a very obvious thing to say, but obviously the sooner the better. If you can nip it in the bud this week, then you can sort of think about other things in the last few games.
Of course, sooner the better, Doug. Yeah, absolutely. There's no getting away from that. But we need to have the right mindset, and the application is at a really high level to make sure that's the case and not let it drag on. But the only focus on now is Rotherham and getting the right result.
I was going to ask about the mindset, because obviously throughout the season, it has been a transitional season, but obviously players are ambitious. They come here. Barnsley are a club who traditionally have been trying to get back into the Championship. I mean, to make that switch suddenly to sort of, we need a few wins to survive. Do you see that the players can do that mindset-wise and not be complacent at all?
I'm hoping so, and that's going to be the complete message. Yeah. I think if anyone was hoping that it's just going to happen, then that's the wrong mindset completely. We've got to go and make it happen. We need to make sure that we have 2 unbelievably good days now on the grass, Thursday and Friday, heading into the Rotherham game. Full clarity in terms of our game plan and how the players are going to set up and look. But ultimately, you need to fight and have the right mentality going into the game. It's all well and good going on about pressing shapes and tactics and structure and how you want to look, but ultimately you need to do the basics of the game to get a foothold in any game, to be competitive and to give yourself a chance of getting the right result.
Talked about the sort of defensive stuff. Obviously, no one doubts the work of yourself and the staff. But has there been times this season, obviously it's your first season, where you've thought, is it the right work that we're doing? Is it getting through to the players properly?
I think that's probably a question that I will answer properly on reflection at the end of the season. Really, I think I believe in the work that me and the staff do. I believe in the work that the players are doing in terms of listening to the information. Have we really forced that information from the very first day of pre-season? Yes. Have we gone about it in a certain way that maybe you could change in the future or whatever, potentially? But that's something that we will reflect on probably in the off season, and then kind of move forward with it to see if it was, if there's a different way maybe you can go about it.
And just lastly from me, just to check on David McGoldrick, Tom Bradshaw, obviously a lot of workload for those two. I know Leah Farrell has come in, but how are they doing sort of in terms of dealing with the rigours of it all? And McGoldrick's played every minute for like 10 games. Obviously Bradshaw not scored for a few games. How would you assess them sort of physically and in terms of like confidence and stuff at the moment?
Well, right now they're giving me absolutely everything, that's for sure. And credit to them. They're Tom's obviously a little bit younger than Didsey. And we've not kind of mentioned the schedule of our fixture list too much recently, even though we all know it. But it's something that obviously I'm aware of in the back of my head. Didsey is the age that Didsey is, and it's going to take an effect. Same with Tom Bradshaw, and same with a lot of the young lads. They have not played as much minutes this season at senior football probably than they have ever. Vimal, Blandy, Patrick Kelly obviously had a little bit of a stint with Doncaster in their promotion, but he's played a lot of minutes for us. Reyes is another one. But we need a big effort from everyone now, regardless of age, regardless if you're young, old, or played a lot of minutes. We need a big effort from everyone, starting with Saturday, and we'll deal with the tiredness then as the games go on.
Cheers, Conor.
Thank you.
Hi, Conor. Hope you well. I think everyone would say you've had a hell of a lot to contend with this year, one thing and another. But I suppose it's an unforgiving world. So if you had a bad day on Saturday, some of the fans could get a bit grumpy and aim things towards you. I suppose in that respect, you've got to have a big a strong jaw in these sort of situations.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of it, Leon, and I'm fully capable of taking it on board. I'm a big boy, regardless if I'm first year of head coach. I'm a big boy. I'm able to take criticism. I've done it all my career when I was a player, and it's no different as a head coach. Look, I understand the frustrations of the fans, and I wanted to give them more days of happiness of 3 points, and and relive the memories of me when I was captain here at Wembley, and famous goals that we always talk about and whatnot. And ultimately, I've not been able to give him as many happy days as what we would like. But there's still time. There's still time to put that right over the next kind of couple of games and till the end of the season, of course, because I want to give them some happy memories starting with Saturday between now and end of the season. And I know, look, it's not easy for them to get up for games at the minute because of the situation that we're in. But I'm really looking for that volume and that connection over these next couple of games to try and give us that big lift that everyone needs.
In tough times, you proved it in your playing career. Obviously, when you started out at Sunderland and then Ipswich, and you picked yourself up and had a fantastic career in that regard. And you think of Barnsley when you played as well, that first half of the famous Wembley season. That was really hard, and you all fought back. these tough times bring out the best in individuals. I mean, you've shown that in your own story, haven't you?
Absolutely, and that's what I'm falling back on, if I'm honest. I've no problem with taking setbacks. I've no problem with taking knockbacks. Bring it on. If for what I'm concerned, look, it's been an unbelievable season for myself as first year of head coach. Loads of knockbacks, loads of setbacks. Sorry, loads of learning, loads of reflection, and I really believe that kind of this season will only make me stronger moving forward, heading into the future of my head coach career. So, look.
Yeah.
That can be talked about in the summer, and I can reflect in the summer. But right now, I've got a job to do and try and get the lads in a really good position heading into Rotherham.
Is it a little bit similar to maybe this time last year? You're sort of steadying the ship a little bit, and then you've got to see where everything's at in the summer, and then see what going forward, what things are going to look like. Yeah,
but we need results as well, Leon. I don't think last year we had even though we wanted to win loads of games, there was a period, obviously, but maybe this time last year with 6-7 games to go, we all knew that we were kind of mid-table and getting ready for the summer. Whereas now we've still got work to do, we've still got points to put on the board, and that's the only focus right now, and it needs to be for the players as well. When you have hard times, you have to set the tone from a head coach point of view. And that will be me heading into the meeting room and onto the grass today about where I want to go and how I want to do it. And hopefully it will come true and come out on Saturday.
And whether you touch on your squad options, there's obviously players there where David McGoldrick playing probably too many minutes than he should. Other players too. You've got, and there'll be probably players carrying niggles. There's all sorts of things, isn't there? You have to really watch game time and stuff like that. Yeah,
it's the time of year now that we're in. Every club will have tired legs, carrying niggles, injuries, and we're no different. So it's a real big push from everyone, over these next 7 games, and we'll deal with the kind of the knocks and the injuries and the tired bodies as the game goes on, as the games go on. Sorry, but right now we need to put that completely out of our head, and we know we've got a big week ahead. There's obviously two derbies in there with Rotherham and Bradford, obviously the following Saturday, and obviously Port Vale midweek. So we've got a big week to get points on the board.
And if you can get a couple of results quickly, you can enjoy that end to the season a bit more, can't you? Really, it can maybe relax a little bit. I don't know if that's the right word, but it'll calm things down. Maybe.
Yeah, potentially. But right now, there's no thinking about relaxing. There's no think about we need to get the points on the board first before thinking about anything like that.
I was going to ask you finally about young Flavell, the goalkeeper. Is there a chance that he might have a look at him before the end of the season? He obviously came into the game at Burton, didn't he?
Yeah, no, I think he done well at Burton. The one thing about the Burton game compared to the Plymouth game is, we knew that there wouldn't be probably loads of opportunities in the game because, Burton aren't that free-flowing team that score loads of goals. We knew it was going to be a very, very tight game. So to come into that game probably suited him, because he's not played all season pretty much. Whereas Plymouth, we knew they had, a real goal threat with their 2 strikers up the top of the pitch. They're massive on set plays. So I think it would have been a real challenging game for Flav. There's an opportunity for Flav definitely to get a couple of games before the end of the season. But right now it's a time for, of proper selection from number 1 to 11, by the way, not just the goalkeeping selection, and to deal with the rest kind of as the games go on.